Welcome or welcome back to Trail and Ultra Running Training. My name is Will Franz. I'm a running coach and a strength coach, and the whole goal of this podcast is to help you run better, have a little more fun on the trails. If you like this information, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe or leave a rating or review or drop a comment, or arguably even better, just share it with somebody that you think needs to hear it. All of those things help do the internet things at which I'm not very good at doing. So if you do that, thank you. And today let's talk about this idea that still gets propagated across the internet, that strength training is a waste of time for runners. And I'm going to come out a little hot on this one because the amount of shit that people say on the internet to sell their stuff is wild to me. And we could go on into this infinitely, from magic exercise tools like $400 worth of bands that purport to be a replacement for an entire gym, to special proprietary programs like whatever methodology that is named after you and your clever self, to ketones, to supplements, to whatever. There is a lot of stuff on the internet that just doesn't really work. And even if it does work, it's not because it's magic, it's because it gets you to actually do things. Let's take ketones, for example. One, they're not a great fuel. They can cause serious problems in certain people who have a almost ketoacidosis reaction to them, where your body just really doesn't like them. They do seem to have some marginal, we're talking maybe a 1% improvement recovery benefit if you take them after a workout, but they're also $4 for a tiny little jar of stuff that tastes like jet fuel flavored with artificial whatever, raspberry usually, and the person who usually asks me about ketones is the person who also really struggles to hit workouts well and doesn't eat enough and sleeps badly and is constantly really stressed, right? And these things are not helpful for any of this, because they provide a 1% or less benefit if used appropriately on probably an Olympian level runner. The people I see pushing or really benefiting from these things are at the Olympic Training Center. Whereas for most of us, we just need to sleep a little more and eat a little more food and make sure that we're eating enough protein and training appropriately. And if we do those things, we will get probably a 20% performance increase. But that stuff's kind of hard, so we don't really do that. And this is why I get frustrated when people downplay the stuff that actually works and might make a difference. And when we're talking about running, that is running. And running more, probably, depending how much you're running right now, running at a wide variety of paces, with most of it being on the slower side. And most running coaches agree on the above. And then there are the other things, like sleep, which you need to do or you can't produce hormones. Eating enough quality food, or else you can't recover. What is enough? I don't know. Try eating more if you feel under-recovered all the time and see if that helps. And see what happens. Stress management, which is a big one. I realize that we often use running as a stress management tool, but we also have to recognize that it is a stress. So maybe also take a 5-minute break where you just sit on your ass and do nothing. And that would also be really helpful. I realize that's going to cause some mental stress, probably. But this is why meditation helps. It'll probably help. And strength training. And I've heard running coaches talk negatively about all of those things, right? Which is just wild to me, that people would downplay things like sleep and food or whatever when we know that they're helpful. All I want you to do is run and run more in the way that their programming tells you to run. And I feel like there's one of two reasons for this. Either they only work with professional athletes who are usually really geared into this stuff already. Because by the time we get to, the professional sphere, it's not that there aren't problems. I'm not trying to say that they're not. I realize like eating disorders and all these things are pretty rampant, but we're pretty geared in at least enough on nutrition that and enough on sleep. And a lot of people who end up in this space are genetic anomalies in that they might need to sleep less or they might be a higher responder to calorie intake. That's actually a real thing. That's a real thing in the bodybuilding world where the really big bodybuilders often respond more to lower calories. So they don't need to eat as much. They don't need to put down 10,000 calories in order to be a 350-pound human. But that's neither here nor there. So we often see this when the person has coached nobody but professional athletes, because we have this like genetic anomaly that is where that is going to respond to lots of running and probably doesn't need a lot else because that's what got them to the professional sphere in the first place. And then small tweaks are really all you need, and those small tweaks are really hard to make. Like this is where running intervals at like a 5-minute mile pace versus a 5:15 pace really matters. And the other person I see that really gets stuck in this is someone who's just kind of stuck in the 1960s, like with Arthur Lydiard, and like really high volume training. And I realize there's a lot of good reason for this because some of the larger running certifications out there kind of still follow that model. They don't talk about strength training. They don't talk about the importance of other things until we get to this like 50, 60, 70 mile week space where if we're not there, then it's almost viewed as a waste of time. And I think we're just missing the forest for the trees in a lot of ways. Like for one, Arthur Lydiard coached farmers a lot of the time. So as a result, they were really strong anyway. I mostly coach desk workers. So we have a very big disparity in the like daily activity of picking up really heavy things. New Zealand farmers are moving around sheep, whereas as a desk worker on my desk days, I move around a mouse. And as a result, I probably need to get in the gym and pick up some stuff, right? That's just, it's a different lifestyle backing. We also see we have learned more. Like there needs to be a bigger integration of speed work. And then the strength stuff is not necessarily that the strength training is not helpful. It is just that it's usually bad. Strength training for runners is just so badly programmed most of the time. I don't really even know what to say about it. But we end up in this space where we're constantly like fighting this battle of what we would call graded exposure, where somebody's running, they're trying to crank their mileage, and then they get injured or they have a setback or whatever happens, and then they back off and they try to slowly build back up to it doing the exact same thing they were before. So instead of maybe getting injured at 30 miles a week, maybe we're going to get injured at 40 miles a week. And we're just going to hopscotch that cycle, and it's going to take forever, and it's frustrating. Or we could add some specific variability to the training. And this can be a bunch of stuff. It can be drills. It can be strength work. Strength work is usually a pretty easy way to go because it can be very specifically geared towards running. Something like a Bulgarian split squat is single leg movement, engages balance. You're forward in your foot. You're driving through the whole foot. It is a power movement. If you want to create power as a runner, then you should be decently good at Bulgarian split squats. And if you can't do decent Bulgarian split squats and you don't have any power at running, that would be a great additional thing to add in order to improve your running power. Like these are a fairly one-to-one thing. Unfortunately, that is a really hard movement a lot of the time. And when we toss someone like some fairly untrained individual, usually a like PhD candidate, because this is who studies are done on. So like a college-age male PhD candidate or undergrad who hasn't trained very much, and we toss them into a study, that person might not even be able to do one Bulgarian. And as a result, we don't include them. We do like band work and these small movements that, yes, it's strength training, but it's not hard enough to actually create a difference. So we don't make any progress because we didn't give a stimulus that's actually going to be helpful, right? But if we actually do strength work in a way that is specific to the goals we're trying to achieve and variable, as in different from the rest of our training. So strength work should also not like completely mimic running, right? Like I love a walking lunge. I think it's great. It does actually have a lot of crossover to running for more reasons than I'm going to bore anybody with right now. But what it doesn't really shine in the 20 rep per leg space. That is a good warm-up. That actually could be a great running warm-up, especially if you have hip pain, where you kind of breathe through each rep and take it really smoothly, and you do a fairly high rep on the walking lunge side. Could really get your hips moving in a way that could be beneficial to running. Could be a great warm-up for you. But from a strength perspective, probably want to do heavy, lower rep, and make the feet work in a way, and make the legs work, and make the glutes work in a way that supports the running but isn't the exact same. Now, I think we also run into the space back to the idea of training professional athletes, where a lot of people don't find running when they're a kid. They don't necessarily move in a way that fosters good running performance. So if we give some support that helps someone move a little better and move in a way that actually supports their running goals, then we will see more progress. Like I finally started enjoying running around the age of 30, and I'm a short, muscular human who had breathing issues for like the entire formative years of my life. I had nasal surgery at 19. As a result, my breathing is still not great. Even post-surgery, I still don't have a full nasal passage. I have asthma, which for years has been way worse than I ever gave it credit. Finally came to a head about a year ago. But it, in retrospect, was even a bigger limiting factor than I thought it was. And I mean, I'm like a bulldog, right? Like just kind of short, stocky, can't breathe very well. Or maybe I was a bulldog and now post-surgery I'm more like a pit bull. And I like to do pit bull things. I like to lift heavy weights and move around and be kind of weird. But I also really enjoy doing husky things in the mountain where you run for hours and like disappear into the forest. But I'm not really built to do husky things. Those things are kind of unnatural for me. I am a like short, explosive, lateral movement person. And I can't change my genetics. I can't change the formative years of my life. I can't rebuild a lot of my structure, but I can train in a way that prioritizes muscles and gets my hips and feet and like ribs and everything to move in a way that actually supports the activities I want to do. And this is a problem. This is one of the many problems with the strength is a bad or a waste of time idea, right? Because if I took my 30-year-old self and just tried to run and then run more and then run more, I almost guarantee you I would have just gotten injured. If I dropped all strength training, and I mean, partially because I did get injured because I was kind of following some of that because I get obsessive. And if I had done strength training in a way that worked towards my movement patterns that actually made me like supported running, I probably wouldn't have as many injuries. And this is true for so many people. I have a lot of people who come to me at the tennis club or online or whatever because they're struggling with some level of injury. And we usually dial back the running a little bit and up the strength training and up very specific movements of the strength training that work into the problem areas for whatever they're battling. And a lot of people are in this boat because 60 miles a week is a lot for me and for others. both structurally and from like a time commitment standpoint, because I'm not very fast, and a lot of us just aren't very fast. So a 60-mile week takes a ton of time. And if we're not going to add other training modalities, be it mobility or strength or other focuses, like focusing on nutrition and sleep or whatever, until we hit this like magic high number that might be almost double of what some people should be running depending on their goals, then we're just missing a very good way to help support an athlete, and we're missing it for no other reason than like outdated tradition or a lack of willingness to look at the bigger picture. And I heard about a study on Coop's podcast, and I can't remember who did it. I could find it if anybody's interested, but it was like trail runners and road runners, and the trail runners weren't doing strength work and the road runners were. And when they tested their strength, they were pretty equally strong. And I remember Coop saying something like, if I were a road runner doing strength work, I'd be kind of pissed. And I think that's actually the takeaway there. It's not that road runners just need to run trails or that strength work is a waste of time for whatever. I think the actual takeaway is that you should be kind of pissed if you were in that strength program, because whoever was programming it was not doing a very good job. Because this is often what you see when you look at running programs. We're trying to make an athlete, often a decent caliber athlete, someone who runs a lot, someone who has very strong legs. We're trying to make them stronger with a rubber band that like you can tear in half with your hands if you're motivated enough. Like, that is not what is going to make the difference. It is not going to be banded tube walks or like body weight hip thrusts or body weight walking lunges. It's not that these exercises are bad. It's that they're just not heavy enough to support you and your running. And further, they're also probably not different enough from running when we look at certain things. When we look at walking lunges, especially if they're body weight and they're high rep, they're not different enough from running to create a change in most people. Again, they're a good warm-up, partially because they support running. But if we're struggling with something like high hamstring tendinopathy or IT band syndrome, where the knee is like caving in and we're ending up with like friction-related injuries, these things really aren't going to help because they're just not heavy enough. We need to like pick up a bar or pick up a kettlebell and do some sumo deadlifts in a way that actually force our glute medius and everything to like move out. And that is a standard example because it's really easy to talk about, but this is just so emblematic of the kind of strength work that we can do that's really supportive. And a lot of the time when we hear people talk about strength work, it's just a lack of understanding of the human body. Like, we're talking about foot strengthening exercises or whatever, when usually the presentation of the foot is nothing more than like a representation of how your hip's moving. The foot usually reacts because your hip's kind of out of whack. So instead of, get the shoes or do the foot things if they help you, but one of the actual reasons is to make your foot or make your hip move better, and then your foot will respond accordingly. And if we get stronger and if we move better, then we should run better. Like, if we move better as a stronger human, we will have more power and we will have fewer injuries because we're moving more in line with what we need to be doing. And if it does both of those things, then we'll run better. We also have the question of like, but what if it makes me bulky? Because we have this idea that we need to be really light to run, and like it won't is really my answer. If you go and lift weights and become magically bulky while doing a reasonable amount of strength work and maintaining your running volume, I'll coach you for free for a year. Like, I also might try to convince you to do powerlifting because you might be in the wrong sport. But seriously, if you go put on like 10 to 20 pounds of muscle mass in a couple months from adding a reasonable, like less than 2 hours per week of strength work, and it negatively affects your running, then you're either on testosterone or you're a super responder, or you should try a different sport. But like, I will actually coach for free for a year if you do that, because it just doesn't happen. It's not a thing that happens. You don't magically put on a ton of muscle mass, and it's just so hard to get bigger. People work very hard to put on like a couple pounds of muscle mass per year, and one of the bigger benefits we can get from strength training as a runner isn't necessarily the increased muscle mass. You might gain some in places that are helpful, but it's really the whole movement capabilities you get from moving heavy weights around. Your body works more cohesively as a unit and you become more powerful. And all of that everything in the past 20 minutes doesn't even touch on the fact that it doesn't actually matter if it makes you a better runner. It probably will, but we also want to just be more functional, well-moving human beings. And being stronger helps you live a more like functional, long life, because you'll be able to get up and down from the ground. You'll be able to put a bag in the overhead compartment. You'll be able to like actually be helpful if you have to move. Any of these things are more important than our running performance at whatever race you're doing. And those are the things that strength training can actually deliver. And I can rant about that for another 20 minutes, but I'm not going to. Running or strength work, if it's programmed appropriately, will help you run better because it will help you move better. And it's not even mentioning the benefit that it will just make your life a lot easier, especially as we age and have this guaranteed loss of muscle mass as we get older. Anyway, that's my tirade for the day. If you aren't doing strength training and you want to know more about it, I have a couple guides. You're welcome to reach out to me, or you're on my website, and I'll drop them into the show notes so that you can kind of see how I program for people. They're not exactly, because they're not tailored to you. Back to this like specific thing, they might not be the best fit for you, but if you're not doing anything, you can at least try them. There's a couple options for everyone, ranging from people completely new to people who have no equipment to people who have some decent proficiency in a gym and just want to get stronger than they are. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to go, and I hope you have a great day and a great run. Thank you again for listening to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Podcast. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Just a reminder, nothing you hear on this podcast is medical advice, and you should always speak with a medical professional before making changes to your training or your nutrition. If you enjoyed the podcast or found it helpful, please leave a rating or review. It tells the algorithm robots that people like it, and that means more people will hear it. Or even better, just share it with someone who you think would benefit. If you prefer a video version, head to the Trail and Ultra Running Training Group on Facebook, or check out the Mountain Goat Endurance Coaching YouTube channel. Thank you again, and I hope you have a great next run.